Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. Deliberately making things difficult while Raphania had a screw loose, she was still a real high-ranked knight. A hot-headed idiot like her was still useful in battle, able to take care of things on the front lines. As long as he brought up the path of knights and justice to sway her, this little lady knight would be charged forward like an enraged bull in spite of the dangers ahead. "Well then, I'll leave things to you," the female knight casually spoke, making the few servants behind her turn pale. "Miss, the master let you come out and travel, not to join the army. You're making it hard for us to answer to the master," the oldest servant summoned up the courage to say. Boom. However, before he could finish his words, the little girl's slender fist struck his right eye directly and he toppled. The power of a high-ranked knight was not something that a mere servant could take on. How shameless! Too shameless. Raphania's entire body trembled. "Such a person with no heart for justice whatsoever is my servant. That's an insult to me. How about you? Anyone against it?" Raphania's metallic gloves produced sharp sounds, causing the other servants to immediately shake their heads and toss the unlucky guy on the floor aside. "There's no problem now," Raphania clapped. "You guys, come with me." Leyland had a dark cloud over his head but did not say much in the end as he led the way. In the barracks. "Hey Leyland, there's trouble." Allen's anxious expression did not ease up, and she didn't seem to notice Raphania, who was behind him. She looked completely disheartened. "What's going on? Is this the mission that Castley messed up further? You know about it already. That bastard mixed blood. If not for his sorcery, it would have been impossible for him to become a high-ranked wizard even in 3 centuries. Allen cursed. Life in the army had caused the elves to lose their original elegance. "Skill with sorcery. Bastard mixed blood. Haha. Allen, I never knew you were good at swearing." Leyland chuckled. The AI chip had already told him Castley had both elven and giant dragon blood in him. With 3 bloodlines, he truly was a mixed blood. Giant dragons and elves were both proficient spellcasters, and with their blood, Castley had become a high-ranked wizard before he turned 200. That was a classic example of relying on the heavens to succeed. "Oh, there's also an outsider here." "My apologies." It was only now that Allen saw Raphania behind Leyland. The female knight was astonished by the profanities the elf had spouted. "This is Raphania, a high-ranked knight and an old friend of mine. She wishes to join us." Leyland introduced her to Allen as this was basic courtesy amongst nobles. "Raphania, this is Allen. She's not usually like this." "A high-ranked knight, not bad, not bad. Is this the external help you got for this mission?" Allen's eyes brightened. "No. It's actually just a coincidence. Besides, I don't know the contents of the mission in detail yet." At the mention of proper business, Allen turned grim. "It's an extermination mission. They want us to annihilate a camp of were-creatures with at least 5 high-ranked professionals and even possibly Mailer priests. Damn it, it's basically telling us to go on a suicide mission." Allen spoke aggrievedly. "How about that elven wizard? Has he managed to get us anything?" Leyland was referring to their backer. "He seems quite determined now. A team of theirs with powerhouses is also going on a dangerous mission, and the upper house as well as master of the city have approved it." Allen laughed wryly. "All that he's obtained for us is a group of new soldiers and some supplementary items. We still have to do the mission, though." "Never mind the new troops. They aren't that powerful and might affect our rapport. What do you think about roping Raphania in?" Leyland suggested. Allen had the same thoughts as Leyland, and she nodded. "That's what I was thinking. As for those stupid new recruits, I know them better than you do." "Well then, are you willing to enter the city guards and join my team, Miss Raphania?" Allen asked seriously. "Of course, spreading justice and punishing evil is the reason I'm traveling around and my lifelong path as a knight." Raphania's face seemed to glow. "Great. Welcome. From today onwards, you are a comrade that we can rely on." Allen exclaimed seriously. She seemed to have a favorable impression of this female knight whose thoughts were incomparably pure. Raphania had always been very carefree, and that personality allowed her to integrate into the team quickly. Upon noticing this, Leyland asked for information regarding the mission and headed out of the camp. He walked along the streets aimlessly, suddenly disappearing into a little alley. A layer of dark magic light began to spread around Leyland's body and completely concealed his figure. In a private house nearby, Leyland caught sight of Tiff. "Young master!" Tiff had now swapped to another face and was wrapped up in a black coat, emitting a strange aura. After seeing Leyland's arrival, he immediately bowed respectfully and set up a powerful isolating barrier. With his strength nearing the legendary realm, nobody would be able to see through it unless the Chosen herself decided to stalk him by intention. Is he already about to break through? As the god that Tiff believed in, Leyland had a great understanding of Tiff's feelings. The energy in Tiff's body had already almost been completely purified, and he was truly only one step away from becoming a legend. Observing the process of someone else becoming a legend was a huge source of enlightenment and motivation for Leyland now. The realm of legends holds true power in the world of gods. It's also the beginning on one's path to godhood, not as easy as purifying one's power. While Tiff was not purely a wizard, there was still much information that Leyland could make use of. Light flashed in the depths of his eyes, and Tiff's stats and aura undulations were accurately copied by the AI chip. How have things been lately? Leyland indifferently asked. I've taken in more followers, though a few organizations have begun to take notice of this. Also, news of the incoming war can no longer be hidden. It's quickly being spread amongst the regular people, and the price of rations and weapons in the black market has been steadily rising. Tiff reported conscientiously. He had initially been a loyal believer of the winged serpent god, Kukulkan. He now treated Leyland as the saint of his god and his substitute, so if his loyalty was quantified, it would be at the highest possible value. With Tiff's strength approaching the legendary realm, he was one of Leyland's trump cards. Leyland sent him out to gather strength, ready to make a move at the most opportune moment. He was someone who had been able to do as he pleased for a long time due to his strength. His abilities and schemes were marvelous, and with Leyland's financial help, the plans proceeded smoothly. After reselling some rare and scarce items, he had even earned much wealth. The war has yet to break out, and we still have our most important mission. Once the invasion of the orcs begins, nobody will have time to watch us closely. Leyland rubbed his chin. Perhaps our mighty and benevolent city master will announce something that can coincidentally rid our group of all suspicion. War was comparable to allowing the people to carry arms and demanding that they bring their own rations and take care of themselves. When the situation was dire, the city master probably would not raise too many objections against these empty promises of titles. Understood, young master, your will is my command. Tiff nodded gravely to show his understanding. Also, there's a large base in the dark forest. Do you remember it? Leyland immediately produced a map used by the military and pointed at the location where the mission was to be carried out. This place, Tiff's brows furrowed, as if he had been put in a difficult position. Such an expression on Tiff's face meant that something was abnormal, and it could even be dangerous. What is it? Leyland immediately asked. This is a were-creature camp on the outskirts. I've had dealings with them before. The people Tiff took in were obviously not good, pure people. They were the elites of the dark world, and were-creatures were included on the list. It was completely normal for him to have had dealings with the Moonwood or even the Blackblood tribe before. How powerful are they? Something that put even a near-legendary being on the spot was naturally not easy to take care of. Even knowing that Castley would definitely give him the most difficult mission, the difficulty it posed seemed to have surpassed Leyland's expectations. There's a being there that even I feel is dangerous. Also, they have priests of the god of the hunt there. A being that could make Tiff feel danger was at least on the same level as him. On top of that, if this organization had a priest, then they would be at a completely different level than before. If young master must attack this base, please allow me to follow you in secret. Evidently, Tiff was not optimistic at all about Leyland's mission. All right, add the more powerful ones you've recruited as well and have them tail us secretly. Leyland did not try to make things hard for himself. He was merely a rank 12 wizard now, and there was quite a number of people who were more powerful than him in Silveramoon. However, compared to the great tide of orcs and orc legends, as well as the god backing them, the Blackblood tribe is rather weak. Leyland sighed. Given how difficult this mission was, Leyland would probably rise to the middle ranks of Silveramoon after it was completed. March Castley. I'll remember this. Leyland obviously wasn't someone who'd take a blow lying down. Everything Castley had done to him would be returned tenfold, even 100-fold. Wasn't everything possible in times of war? As the cold wind whistled, a small team slowly set out from the gates of Silveramoon, radiating a solemn atmosphere. Although they know that the journey was perilous, they could not escape their orders. Such was the sorrow of enlisting in the army. Raffania, knights can't be mounted in the Moonwood. There are too many trees and brambles. Alin was still telling Raffania about things she should take note of. Don't worry, my skill is passable. I don't need to work together with a warhorse. Raffania patted her black sharkskin scabbard, looking relaxed. Mounts were usually half the strength of many high-ranked knights, but things were different with Raffania. After her previous experiences, she had deliberately trained herself in this area. She still retained much of her original strength, even without a mount. She was on a completely different level when compared with those who could only become heavy-armored fighters once they lost their horses. That's good. Let me introduce you to the main forces of the troops. Alin exclaimed happily while introducing her to the rest of the men. You already know Leyland, our wizard. That is our scout captain, the Thief Lancer. Alin pointed towards a slender figure wearing tight-fitting clothing with half his face covered. Then there's the brothers who lead our warriors, Og and Otto. As the defensive forces in the team, Og and Otto had sturdy muscles and carried halberds, claw hammers, and other heavy weapons. Behind them were almost 20 elite warriors wearing steel armor like chainmail. They were rank 3 warriors or greater and could be considered rather strong. Hello! Og and Otto smiled and greeted her. Their expressions were very innocent, a stark contrast to their insanity in battle. And then there's our healer and the beauty of the team, the cleric Jinx. Alin approached a blonde girl. She wore white cleric robes and sat on a white horse summon. Sister Alin, don't tease me. What do you mean by beauty? Jinx blushed slightly. With her cascading golden hair, she had a calm aura. We used to be a team of 50, but due to a bitter fight, tens of our men died. We haven't had the time to replace them. Alin brought Raffania to take a look at the team, looking desolate and regretful. Even she did not dare bring in new friends when they were about to carry out a dangerous mission, not to mention that there could be spies in their midst. Raffania, you're a knight. As usual, you will be assigned 2 servants and 4 grooms. Every month you'll receive an extra salary for them. Don't hesitate to report your name. Alin waved her hand generously. I only have 4 servants. Sister Alin, just do what you need to. Raffania answered without care. With her background, she naturally did not think much of the allowance from the army. However, for many commoner knights, this was great wealth. In order to get more gold coins, commoner knights did not mind reducing the number of servants and grooms while still earning the same amount. Leyland could not help but sigh. Embezzling money by adding non-existent servants to the payroll was a common situation everywhere, it seemed. It didn't need to be specially taught. All right then, we'll treat it as 2 servants and 2 grooms. Alin watched Raffania attentively, but discovered she was not acting strangely. She could not help but shake her head, feeling ashamed of her thoughts. Oh look, are those goblins? Raffania's mind was obviously not on this matter, and her attention was already on something else. There were a few green-skinned creatures in the wilderness, looking exactly the same as the goblins Leyland had seen before. They were staring at the group greedily, but did not dare charge forward, seemingly timid and afraid. Yes, don't worry, they wouldn't dare attack fully armed human troops, Alin exclaimed, and then watched speechlessly as Raffania urged her horse to go forth. She then looked towards Leyland, who shrugged his shoulders helplessly. All right, I finally understand why you had such a reluctant expression when introducing Raffania to me. Alin urged her horse to Leyland's side and rolled her eyes. Though the journey was more fun with the Lady Knight Raffania, they were now increasingly closer to the Moonwood. The atmosphere in the group grew increasingly solemn. Night came, and tens of tents were erected in the army camp. Heaps of bonfires were ignited in an orderly manner, with simple army rations cooking above them. Leyland had opened a can and poured solid fish floss into the boiling soup. It's fish floss. I often ate this while traveling in the south. Raffania, who was seated beside Leyland, twitched her nose. Is that so? Leyland smiled slightly, not revealing that he was the master of the supply chain. Due to the location and matured supply chain, the Church of Wealth hadn't left the Fallen family alone in its work. They'd invested in them to gain most of the ownership rights to the fish floss. With the support from their tremendous wealth and network, sales of fish floss had extended to the north in a few years. It had even become the required army rations in Silveramoon, which made him feel rather honored. While imitations had begun to appear in the market, the quantity, scale, and techniques could not compare with the Shrine of Wealth. Hence, the profits would be maintained for a long time. Leyland received these updates as the family sent him money every year. Although he was improving himself, Leyland hadn't relinquished control of his family and other organizations. Becoming a legend, or even a high-ranked wizard, would be enough for him to do as he pleased in the world of gods. But his goal wasn't just personal improvement. He wanted to become a god, and personal strength wasn't enough for that. Even the great gods who were high above needed support from followers. Actually, the rules to become a god in the world of gods aren't that strict. With Leyland's foresight, he could obviously see through many things. If I become a new god, it will be easier to get support from the world origin force. 1,000 pious believers are enough to support the birth of a new god. It's the old ones facing more trouble. They need to expand about tenfold and can easily become enemies to other gods with similar roles. Leyland's eyes glinted. Of course, there's an easier way to become a god, through luck. If I manage to obtain divine power crystals as well as the godhood of a fallen god, it would be easy to become one. But even after becoming one that way, I would still be immortal. Resurrecting as a god will not be a certainty. Leyland actually thought little of these gods that had gotten lucky. Comprehension of the powers of laws could not be completed in a day. Even high-ranked legends may not be able to fully comprehend the power of laws, much less those who had once been regular people. It was like using a child's strength to brandish a huge hammer. The result would be obvious. Of course, Leyland was different. His main body had the experiences of a near-rank 7 Magus and assistance from the AI chip. If he ascended to godhood with weak divine power, it was still possible for him to embrace and support it. It's a pity. Something as good the heavens granting divinity no longer exists. The gods will never be forgotten. Even if they die from unnatural causes, godhoods and divine weapons will still land in the hands of the gods that killed them. It can't be given to others. Comprehension of another law like this will only pollute my path. Leyland looked incomparably grim. He was still a warlock at heart and followed the path of magi. Rank 7 magi needed to completely grasp the power of one law, and rank 8 magi needed to comprehend multiple laws. Only by finding their own path and smelting the power of laws into oneself would a person find themselves at the peak of rank 8, peering into the realm of rank 9. With a rough idea of the path, Leyland wasn't willing to mix in more laws. Unless it's a law of divinity that I need, even should a godhood with powerful divine power dangle before my eyes, I won't pay it any mind. Leyland gave a deep sigh. Heth, what are you thinking about? His expression naturally aroused the interest of Raffania beside him. I'm wondering when this fish soup will be done. Leyland shook his head. If he were to tell the female knight beside him that he was considering becoming a god, she would definitely think he was a lunatic. Someone who wasn't even a rank 15 high-ranked wizard dared say that he wanted to become a god. Even those legends did not have the guts to do so. Almost there. Raffania breathed in deeply. She obviously had more experience from before and seemed to have some culinary skills. My apologies for bothering the two of you. Jinx came over at this moment, her pure white robes gliding across the grass. She radiated a sense of exceptional beauty. Captain Allen told me to notify all officers who are squadron leaders or higher to come to the central tent immediately. Spy the flame of a thick wax candle flickered within the tent, illuminating the area brightly. Leyland, Raffania, and the other team leaders formed a circle with Allen in the captain's seat. The map of the Moonwood was hung on one side of the tent. This mission is going to be quite difficult. Do any of you have viable plans? Allen furrowed her slender brows, but the responses disappointed her. Leyland, what do you think? She looked over to Leyland expectantly. As an army wizard, he held a remarkably high position. Besides, he had already proven his ability before. He was second only to herself in the team. There have been no further intelligence reports. I only know their rough position and the presence of high-ranked were-creatures within their team. In this situation, we can only reinforce our security and wait for the right opportunity to grab them by the throat. Although what Leyland said made sense, it wasn't enough to satisfy her. Allen knitted her brows once again. Leyland naturally understood her worries. He did indeed have a plan. However, it required Tiff and the devil worshippers, so he naturally couldn't tell Allen and the team. She looked around the room disheartenedly before waving her hand to dismiss them. Well, all right then. I'm sorry to have interrupted your dinner. Let us end the meeting here. Despair was evident in her face. Don't worry, Sister Allen. Justice always prevails. Those damned were-creatures will not win against us. At this point, The only one left who was full of confidence was, of course, the young female knight. Ultimately, this was still a world led by physical strength. Raphania only attended the meeting because she was a high-ranked knight. It afforded her a position equivalent to a military officer who was a low-ranked captain. "I trust you." Olin smiled helplessly, unable to find the strength to respond to Raphania in any other way. "Leyland, why did Olin look so dejected towards the end?" Raphania wasn't able to contain her curiosity after leaving the tent. "Is the mission too challenging?" "No idea." Leyland shook his head and realized that the girl hadn't been changed at all by prior experience. "The fish broth is done, miss." Raphania's servant brought up 2 bowls of fish broth and the staple white bread, not forgetting the wild berries they picked along the way. "Woo!" Raphania cheered and began digging in. Leyland laughed mindlessly at Raphania and tore his bread unhurriedly before dipping it into the broth and sending it into his mouth. He only called out to her as they were about to part. "Raphania." "Yeah, what's the matter?" There were still leftover crumbs on the side of her lips, and she resembled a gluttonous little kitten. "Nothing, I just have a premonition that tonight won't be peaceful. Keep your weapons close," Leyland notified her. After going their separate ways, Leyland looked around to make sure no one had their eyes on him before sneaking into Olin's tent. The silver moonlight was exceptionally dull this night, broken only by a few lone storm clouds that passed the region every once in a while. The winds howled and temperatures dipped, and everyone else, but from the patrolling soldiers, had long ducked into their respective tents. Only the unfortunate soldiers on night duty were left to fend for themselves as they cursed at their luck. Out of nowhere, a thick dark cloud floated across and swallowed the moon hole. The moonlight disappeared completely in the span of a second, and the only remaining light was from the handful of bonfires around. The guards' line of sight grew hazy, and they could only see things within 5 meters even if they sat by the bonfires. "What a dark night, and such dense fog," a patrol soldier grumbled. "Come on. I've seen even scarier fogs in the endless wilderness, to the extent that you can't see your fingers even when you've stretched your hand out." Another patrol soldier replied with disdain. "Well, you're right." The younger soldier nodded his head, but then he tightened his grip on his weapon. "Who's there?" A shadow approached them in the fog. "It's me," it spoke with a familiar voice. "Oh, it's the captain, ma'am." The patrol soldiers saluted immediately. However, in the instant they bowed, a few slashes flashed coldly in the night. Fear and confusion brimmed their eyes as they tightly pressed their hands to their necks for dear life, blood seeping through the fingers. The collapse of both their bodies attracted no unwanted attention. The hazy shadow seemed to let out a sigh of relief before arriving in front of another tent. "Who's there?" Leyland asked from within the tent. "It's me, Lancher." The shadow sounded calm. "I see. Is there anything?" "Hold on, I'll deactivate the alarm." The tent lit up for a brief moment, and Leyland lifted the entrance open with confusion written all over his face. "Come in." Walking into the tent, the bright light carved out the figure of the shadow. She was slender, as thin as a thread, and wore a mask that covered half of her face. "It was the scout of the team, Lancher. It must be urgent for you to visit at such an unearthly hour." Having shed his wizard robes and wearing only a plain white shirt that revealed his firm chest, Leyland exuded masculinity. "Well, I have an idea with regards to the mission." Lancher's voice was rather strange. "Idea? Why didn't you bring it up during the afternoon meeting? Was something preventing you from mentioning it?" Leyland's expression turned dark, and he took a step closer to her. Actually." Lancher lowered her voice, causing Leyland to move closer towards her in an attempt to catch what she said. Something unexpected happened at that moment. A bright silver dagger appeared in Lancher's hand out of nowhere as she mercilessly slashed at Leyland's throat, the moment he was completely defenseless. Given that she was a high-ranked assassin, there was only one way for this to end. Leyland would die. Phew. The dagger cut into Leyland's throat without difficulty, but the situation was different from what Lancher had expected. Instead of having blood splatter all over, Leyland's body turned into a huge soap bubble, burst in front of her, and left nothing but a strong gale in its wake. This must be high-grade illusion. All color drained from Lancher's face upon realizing that the Leyland she had just encountered was just a fake. She fled from his tent. But things did not go well for her as she walked out into a group of people surrounding her. The real Leyland was wearing his robes neatly and was already aiming his staff at her, with a fully armored Raphania by his side. And in the midst of them all, Olin looked at Lancher in disbelief and, of course, disappointment. Lancher, I can't believe it's you. We've already been friends for more than 50 years and you still couldn't resist the temptation of having power. Olin looked sorrowful. Friendship. Really? Lancher removed her mask to reveal a youthful face, but the remnants of a scar were still evident on her left cheek. It was like a flaw on a piece of art, completely destroying her beauty and rendering her rather ugly. In a world of divine powers, scars like these would be easily healed. But the people who had gifted her this scar back then left a destructive power in the wound that deterred the healing abilities of any divine powers. Since that night, I've never been the same. Lancher laughed coldly before putting her mask back on with hatred-filled eyes. I see, you've never been able to let it go, Olin said in a sorrowful voice. Who are you working for exactly? The were-creatures? Or another faction? Leyland couldn't care less about emotional entanglements like these. He stood out from the crowd and sent orders to surround Lancher completely. Anyone who fought him was an enemy, and if they could not be roped in then, he could only kill them. This was the code of law in the world of gods. Kneel and confess all your sins. This is your last chance of survival, Leyland stated fiercely, but he knew a surrender from Lancher was almost impossible. She was a particularly determined avenger with a strong will. People like her could even drag others to hell with them just for revenge. Leyland was familiar with unmoving fellows like these, thus he sent the command just as Lancher smiled. Kill! Magic and vindication clashed in the blink of an eye. Lancher was just a high-ranked assassin, and though she could certainly bring much trouble to Leyland and his team if things were done in the dark, an open face-off like this was obviously not a strength of hers. Having cast slow and with Raffinia's help, Leyland brought Lancher down in no time. She was stabbed in the abdomen by 2 enormous steel swords, and hot blood trickled from her wounds. Cripple her of all fighting ability. Jinx, treat her. She was Olin's friend after all. Leyland still had some sense in him. Ha, I'd rather die than receive treatment from you. And do you think this is over? Lancher's mask had fallen off long ago in the middle of the fight. Blood trickled from the corners of her lips, and she looked even scarier than before with her menacing appearance. What? Olin's expression didn't look too good. Captain. Just then, Og, who had originally been in charge of planting traps and exterior defenses, was carried in by the others, and it was clear he had suffered an attack. It's the were-creatures. Their abilities are beyond what we've imagined. Ambush, the roars and howling of beasts filled the vicinity, putting everyone on edge. Lancher laughed hysterically. Ha, all of you will die with me. You can never beat those were-creatures. Every one of you will be torn apart and then swallowed. Your souls will be caged in the depths of hell. After spitting out her malicious curse, Lancher's face flushed and fresh blood spurted out from her mouth. Her aura completely disappeared as she died. Ignore her. Listen to me, engage defensive formation. Seeing that Olin wasn't in a good condition, Leyland took over command. It was only now that he found out what exactly had happened directly from Og and began to organize the troops. In reality, everything that happened tonight was within Leyland's plan. Firstly, he found Olin and told her that they may have a spy within their ranks to win her support, which allowed him to plant the trap. And to make things easy for the possible attack, the brothers, Og and Otto, were sent out to be on standby. There were high-ranked were-creatures, so many of them. I can't be sure of the exact number, but my brother tried to protect me. He tried to protect me, and Og's eyes swelled red with tears, and his facial muscles began to twitch. Heal! A spell flew forth from Jinx's hands and swiftly cured most of Og's severe wounds. I'm gonna kill those damned beast bastards. He stood up and grabbed his enormous claw hammer without waiting for his wounds to recover completely. Were you the only one who managed to escape in the close combat team? It looks like I underestimated our enemies this time round. Leyland looked slightly ashamed, but a light flashed deep within in his eyes. Whether it was done intentionally or not, the capture and exposure of Lancher's identity as a spy and her death had dealt a huge blow to Olin. Moreover, the troops led by Og and Otto were now left with casualties, and Otto had even died. Silverymoon City would have to compensate Otto's family for that later on. Jinx was a priest and under heavy restriction, while Raffinia was a new member and did not have enough experience. The event seemed to have cleared quite a number of obstacles for him, but Leyland would never admit to that. He would probably say that it was a coincidence. By then, the were-creatures were already directly outside the campsite, their mountainous shadows and the screams of the guards causing horror to tinge the atmosphere. Everyone stay close, we're in trouble. An eternal flame spell lit up Leyland's palm, and he managed to repel a large amount of the fog. As the soldiers gathered together, he managed to see the were-creatures more clearly. This was a humongous group with at least 200 of the monsters among them, 6 of which had exceptionally strong physiques and savage auras. High-ranked were-creatures, and there's 6 of them. Even the perturbed Alin was now anxious. The were-creatures' strength had greatly surpassed their expectations. If they were at all careless, their troop would be completely wiped out. Suppressing her emotions, Alin returned to her cool-headed self and sent out commands. Defensive formation number 2. How could she not have realized that Lancer had conspired with the were-creatures to kill everyone here? Lancer, my friend, I'm sorry. Alin muttered to herself and drew out her elven sword, the shaft decorated in plant motifs. Its luster suggested that it was an enchanted item. Boom, boom, giant footsteps sounded out, and several giants that were at least 10 meters tall emerged from the fog. They were like walking hills clothed in coppery skin. G-giants. These were-creatures managed to tame giants. Alin's hand trembled ever so slightly as she watched these human-like but also bizarre creatures, and some soldiers even yelped in despair. Giants, those extraordinary creatures from the north. Leyland massaged his temples in distress as data of the creatures was presented to him. Name unknown. Race, giant. Strength, 15. Agility, 6. Vitality, 13. Spirit, 2 feats, 1 strong 2. Regeneration, 3. Armored skin. Description: a unique creature that only exists in the north. Cruel and fierce in temperament, unintelligent, easily tamed by other barbaric tribes. Looking at this strength, they're most certainly connected to the Blackblood tribe. They might even be a branch. Castley obviously wanted us to die. Alin laughed bitterly. Prepare to break through. We can only evacuate as many as we can. She now seemed to have lost heart. Elf from Silveramoon City and other humans. A shadow walked out from the group of were-creatures. He was 2 meters tall and had an appearance similar to that of a human. The difference was that he had unusual beastly patterns all over his face and certain body parts of a beast. He choked in disgust after sniffing in the direction of Leyland and the rest. Damn Silveramoon City. That is a place of evil. It should be wiped clean. As followers of Mailer, the were-creatures were naturally hostile towards the civilized beings of Silveramoon City and hated all who dwelled within it. The city guards were undoubtedly their first target. All of you will die here today. You are all too worthless to even be sacrificed to my lord. The were-creatures growled, and more petrifying shadows headed towards them. Were-creatures had robust physiques and a staggering jumping ability. The temporary barriers by the side of the campsite posed no deterrence to them. Roar. The giants grunted, and every step they took was like a miniature earthquake, flipping tents and crushing soldiers under their feet. Damn it! Leyland, protect me! The elegance of an elf was long forgotten to Alin as her eyes were red with anxiety, and she pulled the elven bow from her back. Greater magic weapon. Leyland's expression became heavy as the luster of a high-grade spell burst forth from his hand. Phew. Silver arrows went off like shooting stars, the spell-filled arrowheads hitting the giants right in their eyes, their weakest points. The giants' defenses still couldn't match high-grade spells, and this was aimed at their eyes. The giants roared as their eyes cracked apart in a soft explosion, copious amount of shimmering liquid and blood dripping everywhere. One pressed a palm against his injured eye as he went berserk, charging towards Alin. Grease. Spell rays enveloped the giants as Leyland took advantage of this moment. He wouldn't be himself if he let go of the chance to target the giant's weakness. Bang. Magnificent lights shot out of his hands like fireworks, and the group of giants immediately went berserk. Even the were-creatures were unable to calm them down. Everything was in a frenzy as they roared wildly and attacked everything in their vicinity, including a handful were-creatures who were shredded into pieces. It's a high-grade spell attack. Get rid of that darned wizard, I'll dispel it. A were-creature clad in a priest robe stood out in the chaos. He, too, had strange decorative motifs and paint on his face. Kill! Alin made use of this chance and charged forwards with Raffania and the rest. The only way they could survive under a situation like this was to go all in. The soldiers were well aware of this too as they plucked up their remaining courage, following Alin's lead and charging ahead. Roar. The clash of the two opposing sides created a fierce orchestra of howls and clangs of steel meeting steel. And yet everything was in vain. Alin's numbers started to dwindle, and they could not win no matter how great their fighting spirit was. The were-creatures were just too many. Go to hell! Having been enhanced by magic, the sword in Allen's hand was brighter than ever. It could easily pierce through the defenses of the were-creatures and cause unimaginable damage to their internal organs. With it, Allen severed the heads of 3 were-creatures in a flash and attracted the attention of their companion, a high-ranked were-creature. I admit you're strong, but too bad, you're still going to hell. The were-creature priest suddenly towered over Allen like a huge and tenacious mountain which she could not scale. I'm your opponent. Leyland had already cast Fly and was blocking the priest from saving his companions. Mid-ranked wizard, you're not worthy to become a sacrifice. The were-creature said in pity and looked into Leyland's bloodlust-filled eyes as if looking at his prey. It caused Leyland to furrow his brow uneasily. I can't be sure what other abilities this rank 15 or higher priest has. Hopefully Tiff and the rest will make it here soon. But of course, Leyland had more than one plan. He was also confident of escaping. As a wizard, there were countless life-saving spells. A simple fly could get him out of the scene in a matter of seconds as long as he wasn't shot down. Rank 15 wizards would escape death even more easily with teleport. This priest in front of him would just be a headache. Taking over, although it's possible for me to deal with a magic-based professional at rank 15 or above, it really doesn't make sense. Leyland watched the were-creature priest while feeling a headache coming on. He was only a rank 12 mid-ranked wizard and could not do anything that stepped beyond the boundaries of what was proper. Such a thing would attract the attention of powerful forces, which was the last thing Leyland wanted. However, with spiritual force that exceeded that of regular wizards, as well as the scanning functions of the AI chip, Leyland was able to discover some magic undulations that had been concealed. He abruptly stepped sideways, turning left to dodge a sudden long green arrow. This corrosive arrow did not reduce in strength as it whizzed right through the body of a were-creature, turning it into froth. High-grade poison arrow. Leyland looked grim, and the mage armor inlaid in his uniform activated. Why are you not in your Black Blood tribe? What are you doing out here? Hee. That's not something you need to know because your head is about to become my loot. The priest opposite him snickered. At this moment, the situation changed again. Another high-grade were-creature suddenly emerged, launching a sneak attack on Allen. A dagger with terrifying black corrosive energy stabbed into her chest. Aulen. Upon seeing this, powerful and dazzling chi burst from Raffania. It seemed to have a burning effect, causing the other were-creatures around her to back off as she took Allen into her arms. See this? Your leader's going to die. Give up. As long as you give up your faith, swear in the name of the god of the hunt and join us, I can let you off. Tempting words left the were-creature priest's mouth. Perhaps he had also realized that Leyland would be difficult to deal with. While it was possible to win, there was a high chance that Leyland would run off. Leyland chuckled, and it caused the priest's expression to change suddenly. Seeing the summoning rays light up on the opponent's body, Leyland knew that his preparations had been successful. Even as the priest looked confused, he suddenly retreated and activated the spell scrolls he had prepared long ago. Magic barrier thorns, summon guards. Immensely powerful spell barriers instantly cleared out the area, enveloping Leyland and his teammates. Meanwhile, a thorny forest rose swiftly from the ground. Heavily armed soldiers were constructed from the soil, rising to confront the were-creatures. What's going on? After seeing the fall of the were-creature priest, a few leaders immediately headed over. Our base is being attacked. It must be a plot by those crafty humans. The priest spoke in frustration. The other were-creatures' expressions quickly changed. What do we do? The high-ranked were-creatures watched Leyland and the others within the barrier. While basically everyone had injuries, they naturally still were able to fight to a certain extent and had magic protection. While it wasn't impossible to break through and wipe them out, they needed time. In this period of time, their own camp could be wiped out. However, if they were to divide their troops, not knowing the power of the opponent would be very dangerous. Leyland's troops were not the benevolent type. These vile humans were of no importance at all compared to their own mission. While were-creatures were synonymous with brainless savages, the ones who could become leaders still possessed some level of intelligence. Let's go! The leader suddenly waved his arms and the others quickly retreated. What about them? One of them looked unwilling to do so, but was immediately shot down. Just think for a moment with your stupid brain. What is more important, our camp or these humans? The priest was also in favor with this decision. As he left, he gave Leyland a deep look. This isn't the last you'll see of us. I look forward to it, Leyland answered with a slight smile. They retreated quickly. In tens of seconds, they'd completely disappeared. Arcane Eye. After using a few detection spells, Leyland nodded in surety. They really left and didn't leave behind any traps. Oh, we succeeded. Ha, I survived. I knew I wouldn't die so easily. The ecstasy of living through a desperate situation immediately caused the soldiers who had survived to descend into a chaotic mess. Many of them even began to cry. After this excitement, they looked at their camp that now looked to be in complete disorder, as well as their comrades who were dead or gravely injured. A soldier began to sob, and soon all sorts of wails began to burst out from the others. Leyland! Alin had a huge wound on her chest. Even with Jinx applying pressure and casting divine spells with milky white light, the blood still gushed out. The bright blood dyed Jinx's pure white priest robes red, making her look slightly disturbing. I'll leave my brothers to you. Promise me that you'll bring them back to Silveramoon alive. Alin's lips were cracked, looking like a traveler on the verge of dying of thirst. What do I do? What do I do? This sort of wound needs a cure serious wounds spell at the very least. I've used up all my divine spell slots. Jinx sobbed. Clerics and priests that used up all their divine magic were even more useless than wizards without spell slots. I promise, Leyland nodded grimly. Then I can relax now. Alin's hands hung down, her eyes closing slightly. Captain, Jinx began to weep. She's not dead yet. Leyland was speechless as he pulled Jinx aside, a spell scroll abruptly appearing in his hands. Create water, freeze. The powerful magic encased Alin in a gigantic layer of ice like an insect. There was still a look of shock on her face. She might be able to hold on for a while longer. Leyland looked serious. Jinx. Yes, the female priest looked up stunned. I have an important task for you. Leyland looked at the priest before him. I need you to escort her back. You're our only cleric beside Alin, only you can keep her alive. As for safety, I'll send a few people to accompany you. No problem. Jinx wiped off her tears and answered quickly. After they lost Alin, Leyland now had the right to command them all. Wait, won't you go back with me? Jinx only managed to react after a moment, asking in surprise. Go back, do you want to be court-martialed? Castley definitely won't let us off. Leyland looked serious. I'll stay behind and complete the mission. Leyland now had a noble aura similar to a hero, which touched Jinx's heart. Oh. Her tears began to flow again. Don't worry, I'll complete the task without fail and tell the church of your achievements. As she was a cleric, Jinx was one who would not be criticized. She obviously believed that Leyland was giving her this chance of survival, which completely moved her. Leyland picked 2 soldiers who seemed all right to send Jinx and those who were gravely injured back. After Alin left, the entire squadron was now entirely in Leyland's control. With the priest leaving, there was nobody who would be monitoring Leyland, and he could now act without reservations. But this method, will it work? I've never heard of it before. Watching the large horse carriage with ice inside leave, Raffania stood by Leyland's side, looking confused. Can using ice slow down the worsening of injuries? With this method, business at the shrine would pick up. Wizards would also begin to pay more attention to ice-type spells, but Raffania had never heard about this before. Yes, in theory, I haven't tested it out before, though, Leyland nodded. In theory, the female knight shrieked. Yes, that's at least some hope. Leyland answered irresponsibly, and then clapped his hands to gather the rest of the soldiers. Standing high above, Leyland looked at the few men they had below. The team had had less than 50 people originally, and with last night's massacre and today's injured leaving, there were only a dozen or so people left. It looked rather pitiful. You'll definitely ask me why we aren't going back. Leyland's voice was low. Now, with the deaths of the many leaders and those who had gone off, he had the most authority here and was the only reasonable commander. Of course, Leyland only needed this authority. It would be much easier for Leyland to just die than make use of these scattered remnants of a defeated troop. To get them working together, Leyland even spoke of what had happened before with the mission, as well as their hostility with Castley. After saying all this, he saw looks of despair in the soldiers' eyes. Yes, with Castley around, we will become deserters if we go back and be sent to trial. Don't think about escaping, because your identification as free citizens as well as your family are all in Silveramoon. Leyland's voice had a strange infectious effect. This battle is not just for yourselves, it's for your future. We must eliminate those wretched were-creatures. At the very least, we need to succeed in battle and return without blame. The soldiers below were first bewildered and afraid, but flames were now blazing in their eyes. Noticing it, Leyland secretly burst into laughter. Bestow, once their commander was defeated, the subordinates stood out to lead their ruined army. They faced powerful enemies and obtained an unimaginable victory. Indeed, this is how a hero should be. Leyland nodded inside. His thought process was completely based off some melodramatic models in his previous life, but it appeared to be popular in this world too. After placating the soldiers and ridding himself of Raffania, Leyland left the camp in the name of investigating the situation. Young master, Tiff appeared from the shadows. You did well. What harvest did you reap? Leyland asked calmly. Leyland's plan had two parts, one in the open and one in the shadows. In the open, he would attract all the attention onto himself, while in secret, Tiff had brought his men to the vicinity. This is why he had allowed Lancher to get in contact with the opponents and reveal the location of their camp, allowing for the attack. While the were-creatures turned out in full strength, Tiff would destroy their nest. Meanwhile, with the perfect timing, they could also take care of the siege surrounding them. While Leyland alone could not match up to the joint attack of the high-ranked werebeasts, he would crush them in terms of intelligence. Their camp was very strictly guarded, and they recovered very quickly. We only managed to break through a part of the surrounding camp and did not manage to get to the core campsite. Tiff looked serious as he produced a scroll with powerful spell remnants. However, it had obviously been used once already. Based on the traces on the outside, their goal seems to be to slaughter dragons. Slaughtering dragons? Leyland froze slightly. Dragons naturally still existed in this world, and they were extraordinary high-grade beings. They were also considered a legendary species, purebloods of which could naturally become legends upon reaching adulthood. With skin that was basically immune to magic, they were effectively the children of the gods. The group of high-grade werebeasts had conspired for a long time, and it was obviously not to kill a few mixed bloods or subspecies. They would probably target an adult dragon, a legend. Why would they slaughter dragons? Leyland pondered over this. While the heroes of human legend gained benefits and divine items upon slaughtering dragons, he knew that things weren't quite as simple. The dragon race was very powerful, and they had their own backers. If one were tainted with the vengeance of a dragon's soul, they would be pursued with hatred by the entire dragon race. Even historically, unless the heroes that slayed dragons had strong backing, few ended up well. On top of that, not every one of those dragons were wealthy enough to rival a country. Wanting to make a fortune off slaying dragons was just a fantasy. Of course, many werebeasts were lunatics, and they could not be judged by normal standards. Could it be a ceremony for the god of the hunt? A legendary dragon would be enough for the god to show his grace. With a god acting, the dragons could do nothing even if they harbored a grudge. But what they would lose from this would be far too much to bear, unless there's something else that's attracting the higher-ups of the werebeasts. Leyland muttered to himself and asked Tiff, "Have you found their target?" He first unrolled the scroll Tiff had gotten. There was a map of the northern lands here, with detailed markings of the various villages, mountain ranges, forests, and rivers. Even the copy Leyland had made with the AI chip's records was only slightly better than this, and a map with this much detail would absolutely fetch a great price in the northern lands. On one mountain range was a little blood-red mark of a beast's tooth, looking formidable and evil. Tiff pointed at the mark on the map. There was a label beside it, the Nether Mountains. I used memory retrieval used on a few slaves. This should be their goal. The werebeasts have received intel of the existence of an adult red dragon there through various means. They aim to behead it, he answered with certainty. While memory retrieval was thought to be a sinister spell, neither Leyland nor Tiff cared about it. Nether Mountains, the red dragon, Leyland mumbled, the glint in his eyes brightening. All of a sudden, his eyes suddenly flashed as the Nether Mountains combined with an incomplete image of the map formed by the AI chip. AI chip, show me the part of the northern lands where the inheritance of the Arcanists could be, he immediately commanded inside. The AI chip worked quickly, and a slightly blurred map appeared with a few tags. This map was something Leyland had copied from the notebook of the Arcanist. Sadly, with the passing of generations, most of the map was lost even with the magical protection. Leyland looked unperturbed as the AI chip copied a version of the map from the scroll and overlapped them. As expected, seeing the location where the Arcanist inheritance was and the beast tooth marking matchup, Leyland's eyes flashed with understanding. Tiff beside him obviously could not see changes in the AI chip, but he knew that Leyland had discovered something. Still, he did not ask. This was smart of Tiff, and Leyland could not help but nod inside. Red Dragon, Werebeasts, the Arcanist. What is the relation between the three? Did those Werebeasts obtain clues of the Arcanist inheritance? Or am I thinking too much and they purely want to offer a sacrifice to Mailer? Leyland's eyes flashed with all sorts of emotions, but then went still. Whatever it is, the Werebeasts must be wiped out. Leyland made up his mind. He put a silver mask on his face, and his eyes turned a frightening red and white. Terrifying, unstable strength burst forth from his body. In that moment, he changed into his identity of the divine devil. My lord! Tiff changed his method of addressing Leyland, knowing that he wanted to hide his identity. All right, let's go see the underlings you recruited. Leyland nodded, the glow of fly coming forth from his body. In a hidden valley, Leyland stood on high ground to look at the underlings Tiff had brought. Almost all of them were scattered around secretly, being of various races. The only commonality was the bloody and savage aura they possessed, making people fearful at the sight of them. Welcome, brothers of my sect. Leyland now wore the robes of a high priest. His clothes that were lined with gold fluttered in the air, making him appear splendidly luxurious. Tiff stood behind him respectfully, emphasizing Leyland's status. The winged serpent god Kukulkan is a powerful and rewarding god. Leyland scanned through these men who would be considered the trash of their races. They had no faith to speak of, and only believed in strength. This was how they were subdued by Tiff. As long as you believe in our god, you will then be rewarded. Leyland saw the looks of disbelief in their eyes and pointed at a beastman wrapped in beast skin. You, come here. What is it? The beastman had the head of a lion and a sturdy body filled with muscles and scars. There was a rebellious look on his face. You will receive the blessing of our god. Leyland's arms wrapped around himself as he moved in a modest and respectful way. When it came to acting as a medium, Leyland had nothing to learn. Meanwhile, powerful energy undulations exploded from his body, filled with a dignified and heavy aura. Even the air was beginning to freeze. HSS. A bundle of flames in the air turned into a strange giant snake with 2 wings. The giant snake's pupils were trained on the lion-headed man, and a terror from his very soul got him to kneel, body quivering. My master, the mighty winged serpent god, Kukulkan, I finally meet you again. Tiff, who was at the side, knelt down piously. My master is the only serpent of the world and possesses boundless strength. Your mighty divine force can swallow the heavens. Leyland began to chant ceremonial verses, and a black ray of light descended from the snake's mouth, falling on the lion-headed man. Boom! The moment the black light descended, it turned into the most ferocious of flames for an instant as it wrapped him within itself. Miserable cries sounded out from within. Such a terrifying scene left the audience silent in their fear. However, before they could even think that Leyland was reprimanding him, the figure of the winged serpent god and the black flames had dissipated, revealing the figure of the lion-headed man. However, there was now a huge change to his body. His golden fur was now completely black, and there was even a black skull brand. This! He touched his body after the transformation, looking to be in disbelief. My master has enlightened you with abilities in magic, transforming you into a sorcerer. Leyland's eyes were aimed at the ground as he spoke calmly. Sorcerer. The dark lion-headed being looked puzzled and then lifted his right arm. Demonic magic rays lit up on his body and the black skull brand on his body flickered layer by layer. This was summon undead. Crash, the ground split open and numerous incomplete skeletons crawled up. It's really magic. This is a sorcerer. How terrifying. He can actually bestow the gift of magic and sorcery. Amongst the stunned looks, the lion-headed man immediately knelt in his ecstasy. My god, the winged serpent god, I believe in you. As a professional who specialized in physical attacks, just a bit of magic would be a huge help to him. The lion-headed man sensed that he now possessed the power of a sorcerer of at least rank 5, and there even seemed to be a possibility of raising this strength. How could he not be delighted to the point of insanity? When compared to the rewards, his faith was nothing. Winged serpent god, you are the serpent of the world and possess boundless strength. The eyes of the others began to shine as they started to pray, voices filled with sincere piety. Once more, faith is actually a contract between gods and mortals. Mortals place their faith in the gods, and in return they receive divine skills. When they die, their souls will have the right to advance to the kingdom of the god. Leyland watched those fellows who were fit to be ordinary believers with bright eyes. If they receive more benefits in return, they won't hesitate to make offerings and worship even a bogus god. This is why there are still so many worshippers of devils and demons in this world. Of course, there was a limit to the worshippers that gods took in. They naturally couldn't bestow their divinity without restriction, or they would make a loss. They could possibly lose a chunk of their divine force, even their godhood. Leyland was currently in the early stages of building the foundation of his church. He had to give his first believers more benefits than normal. How else would he attract the faith of others and have them believe in this non-existent feathered serpent god? As his main body was still in deep slumber, he was completely unable to respond to his followers' prayers and bestow them with divine skills. In reality, that winged Targaryen phantom and the bestowal of the sorcery was all part of a show that Leyland had fabricated and performed with this body. Given that he was but a part of the main soul, even Tiff wouldn't be able to discover any flaws once he disguised himself. As for the magic-like abilities, although those with bloodlines in this world could only rely on what they inherited, Leyland had no fear of bloodline transformation experiments. He was already a mid-rank 7 Warlock after all. Warlocks had always been the best among those who possessed bloodlines. Leyland himself had reached great peaks in the use of bloodline energy, and to use a few captured bloodlines to manufacture a few fake sorcerers did not take much effort. Of course, in the world of gods, this was a miracle that only gods, demons, and devils could achieve, explaining the fervent looks of these men. Sorcery could even be passed on to their children. These benefits were attractive enough to make his subordinates gather around the Church of Kilucan and unite under its name for the time being. They were all ready to drench themselves in blood and fight for Leyland. Another voice sounded at this moment, and Leyland's lips lifted even higher than before. Beep. Rank 3 Weave Analysis. 100%. Host body has obtained all Rank 3 spell models. Spell amnesia has been blocked automatically. Casting of Rank 3 spells no longer requires materials. The analysis of the third level of the weave had already been at the final leg, and now the conditions were ripe enough for it to complete. Leyland couldn't help but feel that the World Origin Force was watching over and taking care of him. Gods always achieved success. None were unfavored by the World Origin Force, and they were said to be the World Will's darlings. Seems like the dormant will of the world of gods can't control the World Origin Force anymore. There's a vacancy for me, eh? The edges of Leyland's lips spread even wider. In the name of our god, let's make war. Q-Culkin, everyone's thirst for battle had already reached its peak. Of course, Leyland wouldn't admit that he had intentionally influenced this. Within the high-ranked were-creature camp in the Moonwood. Damn it, there are actually other humans. The were-creature commander ruthlessly flung a trembling were-creature onto the ground as he huffed. Luckily, only the outskirts were taken down, and they didn't reach the core camp. The were-creature priest on the other side added coldly as he held onto his human bone staff. We need to tighten security across the entire camp. I'm ready to carry out a large-scale sacrificial ceremony for our Lord's favor. He'll send out hunters from his kingdom to assist us. The lesser god of the hunt, Malor, was a gigantic monster similar to apes and monkeys. It didn't get rid of most of its bestial characteristics after it successfully deified and had a morbid thirst for slaughter. The hunters were an exotic species in Malor's kingdom, and they were created specifically to hunt prey. The weakest of them was more powerful than a high-ranked professional, and if the sacrifices of his followers in the mortal world pleased Malor, he would even open up a passage to dispatch the elite forces of his kingdom. Although such forces from the heavens were definitely a little weaker as compared to an incarnated deity, the advantage was that they could be replenished without much heartache. Hunters. The highly ranked were-creature grimaced. The sacrificial offering required clearly cost him dear. Our forces were already enough, but in order to ensure nothing will go wrong, let's go ahead with that. I believe. If we can use the legendary red dragon as an offering in a moment, our master will surely be very pleased. Then I will begin. The were-creature priest arrived at a miniature altar within the camp. This was clearly the core of the camp. It did not suffer from any damage from Tiff's surprise attack. But the instant the priest entered the temple, his expression changed drastically. Woo-oh, woo-oh. Woo! Crimson divine force poured out from the altar into its surroundings, the dazzling radiance representing some sort of special message. There's an enemy. The sound abruptly came to an end, following which an icy cold ray of light flashed past. With a blade cold enough to freeze the entire room, it ferociously thrust itself into the chest of one of the highly ranked were-creatures. A thief who has almost reached the rank of legends. It's the person who launched a sneak attack on us. The were-creature chief roared violently and landed his fist on the ground with a thump. Powerful undulations spread in all four directions. Earth's fist. A high-level physical professional's skill erupted in a series of invisible ripples, forcing a black shadow out of thin air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The silhouette bounced around nimbly and ran several hundred meters away, his figure barely visible. The were-creatures he passed by on the way collapsed with their hands covering their throats. "You won't get away, despicable raider." The were-creature chief had a fierce look on his face as he followed behind at supersonic speed. But right when the chief was at the entrance of the camp, the priest's voice could be heard. "Be careful, it's a trap. He might have a formidable spellcaster." The reminder obviously came a little too late. Just as the were-creature chief came to a halt, a sinister figure with a silver mask suddenly appeared, with a terrifying spell instantly taking shape on his palm. Rank 5 spell, Dragon's Breath. A powerful corrosive force instantaneously swept across the entire area, scorching the hair on the were-creature chief's chest. "Damn it!" The were-creature flew backwards as a dark green radiance on his body flickered continuously. A powerful force was resisting against the corrosive effects of the dragon's breath at lightning speed. The were-creature priest behind the chief was constantly employing treatment spells. After retreating more than 10 meters, the were-creature chief had already completely broken away from the attack range of the dragon's breath. However, the average were-creatures around them were not so lucky. They all collapsed onto the ground, and the entrance to the camp was instantly filled with victims everywhere. The crowd-controlling powers of wizards were always one thing that commanders were most fearful of. "Who are you?" The were-creature chief clearly didn't recognize Leyland, who was in disguise. Moreover, his opponent was formidable and nefarious, which made him feel as though he was facing his greatest foe. This feeling, as if he was devouring everything around him. The were-creature chief's pupils constricted. He now saw Leyland as the most dangerous enemy he had ever met. Zoom. Without giving the chief a chance to even speak, Tiff immediately charged forward. His powers as a highly ranked professional, which were close to being legendary, burst out from him completely. His magic abilities flashed on his body from time to time, and he actually managed to forcibly stall 5 highly ranked were-creatures, although it was 1 against 5. "Kill! Arg!" A wave of troops charged towards the camp. An eldritch lion-headed person who was almost entirely covered in black led the front line. With a ferocious roar, a suit of armor made of bones appeared on its body, along with numerous bony pikes that suddenly thrust forward into the line of were-creatures that couldn't flee in time. Fresh blood dripped continuously along the bony pike. "Charge!" The army of scum instantly broke into the were-creature camp. They were from different walks of life and all kinds of races, but had been brought together by Tiff recently. After seeing what happened to one of them earlier, these dregs of society were investing 120% of their strength in combat in order to obtain the power of a bloodline, and even let their descendants inherit it. Even though their opponents were blessed by the lesser god of the hunt, Malor, they too were protected by the mysterious feathered snake god, Kukulkan. It was undeniable that those who were chosen by Tiff were all rather strong and talented. They were on par with the were-creatures in the camp. Mass frenzy, mass healing. The were-creature priest hid somewhere behind as he watched the enemies solemnly. The races that made up the opponent's army were very diverse, thus he couldn't think of which influential party they belonged to at all. Could it be that a new influential force is already emerging in the vicinity? With their nearly legendary experts, this group cannot be belittled, the were-creature priest muttered. He raised his hand and continued producing a spell which he had been preparing for a long time. Dispel magic. A violet pillar of light descended from the sky, interrupting the were-creature priest and hindering him from casting spells. Leyland folded his arms, calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos, as he stared at the were-creature priest on the ground. "Your opponent is me." Leyland's eyes were ice cold. Previously, he couldn't employ all of his strategies in order to conceal his true strength. But with his identity as a divine emissary, he didn't need to have any considerations. He raised his hand, and lightning chains shot out. Pale blue electric currents bounced across the place, causing a few low-level priests to collapse to the floor. When in combat, kill the clerics first. That was the norm in practically every battle, and Leyland certainly wouldn't sit idly by and let those low-level clerics leisurely heal and assist their troops. After Leyland fixed his attention on him, the were-creature priest suddenly felt a chill in his heart, as though he was facing a gigantic dragon. Vast amounts of probing spells flashed by, yet shortly after they returned with a message that made his expression change drastically. "Divine One, which god do you serve?" the were-creature priest asked in a deep voice, scared out of his wits by Leyland's false godhood. On the continent in the world of gods, stronger beings who could obtain divinity were scarce. The greatest possibility would be that they were bestowed divinity by the gods. Evidently, this were-creature priest considered Leyland as the saint of some deity. Hunter's communication between gods was an extremely solemn affair. If a powerful being was bestowed with divinity, he was bound to have an eminent status even in a god's church. As for a subordinate of one god provoking another, that would practically be the beginning of a war between the gods. The were-creature priest began to feel rather dizzy. Although there had been conflicts and friction between churches, and even between the gods themselves ever since the dusk of the gods, starting an undeclared war like this was a rare event. After all, even a weak god would almost be unrivaled in their divine kingdom. Battle between two gods was a very grave matter, and it could span various dimensions and thousands of years. As a cleric, the priest undoubtedly knew this. He watched Leyland with restrained fear. "You had the cheek to covet our master's wealth." Leyland's reply was very vague, but the were-creature priest's expression changed drastically. As expected, it had to do with the Nether Mountains. Although the priest stopped himself in time, Leyland still got what he wanted. "Sure enough, these were-creatures are up to something. It's not as simple as just the red dragon." He didn't give the priest another chance to speak. Leyland moved swiftly in midair, and the spells that he had been preparing for a long time shot out continuously. Fog barrier. Missile storm. Fireball. A layer of dense fog formed both a barrier and a cage, confining Leyland and the were-creature priest within. It prevented outsiders from intervening and probing them while spell attacks rained down like terrifying meteors with great destructive force. "A presumptuous extremist that started a battle on his own initiative. You shall suffer from punishment by the gods." The were-creature priest had a pious expression on his face. He seemed to be clothed in a milky white suit of protective armor, and a strong radiance kept emanating from his body. Pew, 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 the missiles rebounded off his glowing vest. It flickered and eventually exploded. The enormous scorching fireball struck the ground. Chrome-yellow flames started spreading in all directions, continuously engulfing everything in their way. They quickly formed a gigantic depression in the ground that was covered in black scorch marks, as if it had been crushed by the bottom of a black pan. The were-creature priest stood at the edge of the blackened pit hole, his expression extremely solemn. The priest robes he was wearing had been torn into shreds, and he was almost entirely charred. "Master Mailer, please grant me strength," the were-creature priest murmured. He stripped off his robes in one stroke, exposing his hairy torso. His muscles started to throb, and the dark scars from the flames burst open. Beep. Opponent has activated an innate skill, Wild Surge. A glimmer of light flashed in Leyland's eyes. The Eye of the Hawk, coupled with the probing abilities of the AI chip, revealed everything about the opponent right in front of his eyes. Wild Surge, a special ability of the followers of the lesser god of the hunt, Mailer. Activation buffs strength and vitality by 1 point, additionally granting hunting vision. If in the massacre state, the ability will bestow mid-rank regenerative effects. Cell activity will increase by 50%. The extraordinary Wild Surge technique was an unusual ability bestowed by the lesser god of the hunt to his followers, and its usage would lead to terrible aftereffects. The increased cell activity would drain one's vitality to make up for the deficiencies, and the use of this skill would reduce life expectancy greatly. But it was undeniable that this technique was still incomparably formidable. Leyland could feel the were-creature priest on the ground enter a strange state. Not only had the injuries on his body completely disappeared, sharp claws had even shot out of his fingers. Even though he was just a clergyman of the lesser god of the hunt, he seemed to have transformed into a horrifying hunter after activating the skill. AAHH. The muscles on the priest's leg twisted as he leapt more than 10 meters high. His cold razor-sharp claws ferociously slashed across Leyland's face. So fast, Leyland's eyes sparkled. Your greatest mistake was to falsely think that you could take me on alone. 2 white puffs of air spurted out from the werecreature priest's nostrils. I have a premonition that you will be the most terrifying enemy us werecreatures will ever have. I must kill you here, and this little amount of strength is not enough. Not enough, the priest roared. He suddenly pointed his claws towards himself and ripped out a huge chunk of skin and flesh. Our god, I offer you sacrifice. Please bestow me with the strength to kill this foe. The 2 clumps of flesh started to squirm violently and then exploded. A temporary portal opened to reveal 2 enormous beasts. Dimensional summoning. This creature does not seem to be from the prime material plane of the world of gods. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. What appeared before him were 2 giant primates covered in green scales. They were over 3 meters tall, and their sharp claws were nearly a foot long. Their crimson eyes were filled with bloodthirst. AI chip, Leyland inwardly commanded. The chip loyally returned information on them in the blink of an eye. Hunter, strength, 13 agility, 15 vitality, 10 spirit, 5 feats, 1 wild instinct 2. Poison claw 3, extraordinary regeneration. Description: this is not a creature from the mortal world, but a beast bred by the god of the hunt in his divine domain. It has been specially bred for the hunt and has almost no rationality. If Mailer is pleased with his worshippers' sacrifices, he sends down these creatures to assist them. It has flesh, blood, and a life force, and it even requires a sacrifice of the soul, Leyland thought indifferently as he watched the light dim in the eyes of the werecreature priest. Kill him. The 2 tall hunters at the werecreature's side saw a finger point directly at Leyland. Swish! The 2 hunters who previously seemed to have been playing a game instantly disappeared into thin air. Even Leyland, with his powerful sight, could only see the afterimages of their movements. They're even faster than the priest when he activated Wild Surge. Leyland rapidly ducked under the sharp claws sweeping across him, but a shadow flickered, and another hunter emerged behind his back. 2 arms twisted with muscles violently swept towards Leyland, seemingly wanting to tear him to pieces. Bang! Mage armor II appeared on Leyland's back, buying him a second's time. Once that was done, the clothes on his back seemed to get shredded completely, the scraps flying up into the air like scattered butterflies. Thump! Leyland hit the ground heavily, and dust and smoke flew up into the air. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. The 2 enormous hunters surrounded Leyland, one on either side of him. They roared loudly together. You can't outrun them. Hunters can bring out their utmost power while hunting. The werecreature priest stood opposite Leyland, his eyes filled with a longing for fresh blood. He could already see his claws tearing across Leyland's throat. It deserves to be called a creature made by a god. I didn't know the hunters of legend had such power. A crack appeared in Leyland's silver mask, and he stood up as his body shone with a healing glow. However, even high-ranked hunters still have their weaknesses. Leyland's hands hung down, enveloped in his billowing sleeves. Kill him! Having lost his ability to fly, the werecreature priest found it more beneficial to stay on the ground with the hunters. Both the priest and the hunters seemed to have transformed into black hurricanes, enveloping Leyland in their midst. The formidable wind swept up several small rocks, smashing them to powder. As dust and dirt flew around the area, the 3 clawed beasts completely sealed off Leyland's escape. They flew at him violently and with evil intent. Even if they are a god's creation, they will still have some defects, Leyland sighed. In the instant before the clawed beasts arrived, he urgently used the ring of wizardry on his hand. Oh, a piercing and shrill female voice rang out suddenly, and in a moment overwhelmed their senses. The ear-splitting noise was like that of metal scraping metal, and it brought everything in that space to a standstill. The ear-piercing sound became an air explosion which pushed the 3 shadows apart. Ow! The werecreature priest cut a sorry figure as he departed, blood trailing from his eyes and ears. Sound wave attacks, wail of the banshee. No, if it was that I would be dead already. The werecreature priest was already in this state, and the 2 hunters were in an even worse situation. They rolled back and forth on the ground, letting out pleading cries as if they had suffered an injury to their very souls. Wailing howl. The power of this simplified version of wail of the banshee is rather good. Leyland touched the ring on his left hand. He'd released the spell from his ring of wizardry a moment ago, pulling off an attack against his enemies. Even a god could not create life, and those hunters were clearly hybrids that Mailer had cobbled together from different animal characteristics and souls. Once they were attacked by sound, they immediately became violently unstable. When it came to experiments on flesh and life, were Leyland to claim second, nobody would dare claim first. He was the pinnacle expert of the world of gods in that field. This was the pride of a bloodline warlock. Very well, I've seen most of your spells and abilities. Let's bring this to an end. Leyland looked at the were-creature priest before him as dispassionately as he would look at a corpse, with neither joy nor sorrow in his eyes. To an end? The were-creature priest's expression grew heavy, and his heart was filled with a dark premonition. A rune of a beast fang had soundlessly fallen into his hand. Up! Along with his command, the two hunters who had already stopped their plaintive wails once again threw themselves at Leyland. The runes in his hand flashed with the light of a portal. Absorption using its inborn sharp senses, the were-creature priest immediately felt a sense of danger, one that was enough to threaten its very life. Hence, it happily abandoned the two hunters behind to serve as cannon fodder and activated the transportation device it had to leave. But how could Leyland give it the chance to do that? Dimensional anchor. Exquisite control over this spell allowed Leyland to destroy the were-creature priest's transportation rays in an instant. Afterwards, the now grim priest saw something it could never believe, causing its huge mouth to gape even more, to the point of dislocation. 7 colored rays of light were launched from Leyland's hand's rank 2 spell, Color Spray. The effects of such a weak spell only forced the hunters to pause for a while, but then they charged over again without hesitation. But Leyland's performance was far from over. Color Spray, Color Spray, Color Spray. 9 spell rays flashed at Leyland's hands as if from rainbows, each one cast instantly. While a low-ranked spell had limited effects, a large enough number would result in a fundamental change unless one was completely immune to them. Evidently, these two hunters were swallowed up by these many spells, and they sunk into dizziness and hallucinations. Flaming sphere, flaming sphere, flaming sphere. Fireball, fireball, fireball. Numerous rank 2 and 3 fire spells took shape in Leyland's hands, forming a scene like the stars in the sky. While they were all low-ranked fire-type spells, amassing them like this made them similar to the legendary spell, Meteor Shower. Even the two hunters that had broken away from the attack before still sensed immense danger and retreated quickly. Consider it an honor that you're dying under this move. Leyland smiled slightly. With the guidance of his spiritual force, the flames in the sky descended like meteors. Rumble, continuous explosions sounded out, and the two hunters were drowned out by the multicolor spells. Hee hee! The internet in my previous world also had the 5 Fireball School, where they took over the world with 5 casts of fireballs. But this isn't just 5. Seeing the dazzling flames, Leyland continued to let his imagination run wild. Meanwhile, the were-creature priest saw the hunters who had exploded till there was nothing left of them, and now had a very grim look. So many spell slots, and you can even cast them instantaneously. Are you a legend? No, even legends can't do anything about the limit of 9 spell slots. The were-creature priest now looked to be in a complete mess, on the verge of a breakdown. Leyland smiled at the priest's reaction. Spellcasters suffered in this world. While they could use the weave, they were restricted by spell slots. On top of that, Mystra took something from them every time they cast a spell, holding a part of their spiritual force. For this reason, a few wizards could only cast some low-ranked spells. Even legends lost all battle power after casting a few legendary spells, but Leyland was different. He had completely analyzed the first 4 levels of the weave, and there were no restrictions whatsoever on rank 0 to rank 3 spells. As long as he had enough spiritual force, he would be able to cast low-ranked spells instantly. On top of that, he'd refilled his spell slots the day before. Leyland could cast spells now, but also had extra ones from before and therefore more spiritual force to spare. This resulted in his terrifying abilities in casting spells. In terms of the number of low-ranked spells, he surpassed regular wizards by several times, and could easily use the power of his low-ranked spells to drown his opponents out. As long as the opponent was not completely immune to spells, he had nothing to fear. Of course, this was his greatest trump card. If news of it were ever to spread, the consequences were obvious. Hence, all those who saw his trump card would have to die. With Leyland's previous identity, he had not dared use this without thinking it over. Now this were-creature priest was fated to die here. Watching Leyland unceasingly drawing close, the were-creature priest now looked to have given up all hope. All of a sudden, his face twitched. I know, you're an arcanist. You must be an arcanist. Your companion is in my hands. I can. Ah, terrifying spells flooded out once more. While they were merely low-ranked rank 0 to 3 spells, they were enough to drown out opponents. Watching the priest melting away in the flood, Leyland's interest was visibly piqued. What a surprise! I never thought a were-creature priest in a remote camp would know of the existence of arcanists. On top of that, a companion, huh? It seemed like the priest had also met an arcanist before and had even kept them captive. As long as he killed the priest, everything in the camp would belong to him. Why would Leyland bother trying to bargain with him? The misty barrier dispersed, and Leyland looked at the surroundings. The entire camp was in chaos. Numerous were-creatures and the bodies of their comrades had fallen everywhere, the flowing blood enough to even form little streams. Motivated by the great rewards, Leyland's underlings had gone all out, and they were all immersed in battle. On another battlefield, however, even with near-legendary strength, Tiff was still on a disadvantage. He was facing 5 high-ranked were-creatures and looked to be in a sorry state. Let's go! With Leyland's arrival and the disappearance of the were-creature priest, the high-ranked were-creature leader's expression changed, and he abruptly waved his arms. He was intellectual and could obviously tell that his spellcaster had been taken down. Now that the other side's high-ranked spellcaster could attack as he wished, there would be a calamity. While he was unwilling to do so, he still gritted his teeth and sent down the orders to retreat. But how could Leyland give him this chance? While he could not cast a torrent of spells again, as someone who was nearly a high-ranked wizard, he could still turn the tables. Greater entanglement, hold person, greater vertigo. After taking a casual glance at the battlefield, Leyland flew over to Tiff's battle. Debuffing spells rained down like a storm. Damn it, he has so many spell slots. What's up with the priest? He didn't even make this person use up that many spell slots and died so fast. The were-creature leader roared, but no matter how hard he thought about this, he could not guess the truth. He could only fly into a rage and then welcome the attack from above and around him. After seeing the death of the high-ranked priest, the were-creature's morale had already dropped, and Leyland was now even more ruthless. Considering the circumstances, and taking one of them captive, Leyland then began to crush the were-creatures. Moonbow. A dazzling lightning bow and arrow descended from the skies, piercing through the were-creature leader's chest. Even with this terrifying attack, the leader could still persist for a while before it crumpled to the ground, exhibiting its powerful life energy. After the deaths of the spellcaster and high-ranked were-creature, the entire were-creature camp lost all courage to continue resisting them. Numerous were-creatures howled as they left, while some were hacked to death by some underlings who had gone mad in the fun they were having in the slaughter. Clear out the camp and maintain order. Prepare a few slaves. I have uses for them. After handing the only surviving high-ranked werebeast prisoner to Tiff to tie up, Leyland did not care any longer and headed into the core of the camp. The ground still had bloodstains that had yet to dry, and it was still slightly sticky when one walked across. However, the battle had ended quickly and the main infrastructure had not been damaged. Boom, boom. With Leyland's lead, the statue of Malor and the altar was destroyed. Traces of dim golden rays were still shining from the fragmented pieces. Even a true god will still have restrictions. For instance, they can only sense the surroundings of the altar up to a certain distance, and if they were to descend, they would need to cooperate with the priests here, where they would offer sacrifices or even trigger a holy tide. But there's nothing here at all. Coming down here forcefully would result in damage to one's divinity. Why would that happen for a few high-ranked werebeasts? Leyland guided the underlings outside, and only after Malor's statue was destroyed did he enter the range of the altar. Once it's completely smashed up, he won't be able to sense anything around it. Until now, the altar had been the safest place. The wave of his arms to send away a few men who were quivering on tenterhooks, he arrived by the altar. While there's no divinity here, I can still sense the god of the hunt. Leyland closed his eyes, caressing the shattered giant cyan rocks of the altar and sensing the divine force left behind by Malor. An aura filled with bloodlust, death, and hunting lingered around him. While this is a lesser god, the accumulation isn't half bad. Leyland sighed. The the darkness in his eyes expanding. Devour. Traces of golden divine force surged out of the remains of the ruins, and Leyland devoured it all. While it wasn't quite possible to grasp divinity like this, he could still ingest some divine force. In the world of gods, gods still sent down their divine force to help their followers advance in their professions on occasion. But Leyland was different. He was not Mailer's follower, and Mailer would not bestow his grace upon him. Since the god wouldn't give it on his own, Leyland would take it himself. This was the kind of person he was. As the divine force entered his body, a terrifying, fragmented conscient slowly awakened in Leyland's sea of consciousness, turning into a huge, incomplete ape monster. Helen devouring divine power like this was a very dangerous thing. Even if incomplete, even legends couldn't resist a divine conscient. If any idiot devoured the power of an existing god, he would either go crazy due to the huge conscient or get devoured by the divine force instead and become an incarnation of that god. Yet Leyland was different. His original body was equivalent to a demigod to begin with, and he had the conscient and memories of his host body. He wasn't the least bit afraid of this incomplete conscient. Hiss! An unnerving phantom of a winged snake emerged from Leyland's soul, glaring at the disabled monkey in front of it. Even if it was only a conscient, the monkey screeched in fright. The monkey screeched out of fright despite that it only being a conscient. Boom! The Targaryen looked at the monkey with disdain before swallowing it whole. Leyland's body trembled involuntarily as the AI chip made a report. Beep. Unknown energy absorbed by host body. Determined to be divine essence, near high grade. Spirit increasing. Beep. Energy fully absorbed by host body, spirit +1. Leyland's spirit force increased to a stunning 13 after devouring Mailer's divinity. His spirit was raised substantially, and he could make contact with more of the weave. Meanwhile, the AI chip was still giving him feedback. Host body's spirit stat has reached 13. Host has advanced to rank 13 as a wizard. Host has received 1 rank 6 spell slot, 1 rank 5 spell slot, and 1 rank 4 spell slot. Did I finally break through? Leyland looked at his updated stats. Leyland Fallen. Age 20, race human, rank 13 wizard. Strength 10. Agility 10, physique 10. Spirit force 13. Condition healthy, feats, sturdy, erudite, elementary, perfect body. Spell slots rank 6 2, rank 5 4, rank 4 6, rank 3, rank 2, rank 1. Rank 0, weave analysis progress, level 0, 100%, level 1, 100%, level 2, 100%, level 3, 100%, level 4, 56.77%, level 5, 12.15%, level 6, 0.01%. A 20-year-old rank 13 wizard. I reckon there aren't many like me in Silveramoon City. I'm almost on par with a chosen now, though I guess I did advance with the grace of a god. Leyland had fully digested Mailer's energy, and whilst the god himself realized that he'd lost some of his divinity, he had no idea why. Well, it seems like I'll be entering an eternal feud with the god of the hunt now. Even if he hadn't devoured Mailer's divine force, Leyland would have made an enemy of the god's church anyway. He had killed too many of his werecreature followers. I'll have to face a god sooner or later anyway. The god of the hunt, interesting domain. Leyland smirked. My lord. Tiff, who was waiting outside the altar, was aware that Leyland had changed. However, he didn't point it out. We've detained and imprisoned a group of captives according to your orders, and I found something in the cell at the core of the campsite. Oh, bring me there to have a look. Adrenaline rushed through Leyland as he came to a securely sealed cell with Tiff. I'm the only one who's entered the place. I thought it would be better for few people to know about this. Tiff bowed before positioning himself beside the door like a loyal guard. Can it be? Leyland had a few guesses in his heart, but he was still hesitant as he pushed the door. Clang, the thick and heavy door bellowed. The light inside was dim, and it was covered in the distinct runes of the werecreatures that gave off a barbaric aura. Leyland could tell that it was a high-grade anti-demon spell formation to block off contact with elemental energy and the weave. It evidently a trap, and the person within the cell moved suddenly and raised their head. You're not a werecreature, they mumbled, so softly that Leyland could barely hear. Cling-clang. The chains scraped against each other as this prisoner moved, and Leyland noticed the unique cuffs on their hands. Anti-magic cuffs. Looks like they were really wary of you. Leyland sized the captive up. They were humanoid, but looked like a half-elf. Beneath their long viridescent locks were a pair of pure obsidian eyes and translucent fair skin. Their aura was distinct in spite of the long imprisonment. A faint energy was emitted from their body, but restricted by the anti-magic cuffs on their hands. It was clear that this captive was a wizard. A female half-elf wizard? Tell me, why did the were-creatures imprison you? Leyland asked. I heard screaming and slashing just now. Have you eliminated all of them? The female wizard raised her head and shot Leyland a glance with her unreadable eyes. I guess you can say that. Leyland nodded in agreement. Then aren't you going to release me? She waved her cuffs in question. Nope. Law says you're now my captive unless you have something of value to exchange for your freedom. Leyland shook his head. Besides, you're a half-elf wizard, you should know your value. This was the standard practice in the mainland, but things were different in Silveramoon. The city's leader was good, and if she heard of the situation, she might even have redeemed the half-elf with her own money. But Leyland didn't plan on reporting it. Redemption? I guess you came because of that too. Ignorant idiot. You don't know the suffering it will bring you. The female wizard laughed, her eyes brimming with complicated emotions. Leyland saw a brief moment of regret. Are you talking about the inheritance of the Arcanists near the Nether Mountains and Red Dragon territory? Leyland was sick of beating about the bush. And as expected, the moment he mentioned the Nether Mountains, Red Dragon and Arcanists, her expression changed. So you knew. Actually, I know more than what you think I do. Leyland looked at her robe, which was evidently different from the regular robes of other wizards, and snapped his fingers. A scorching light struck between her hands and melted the anti-magic cuffs. Boiling molten iron dripped to the floor and sizzled, producing white fumes in its wake. But the female wizard had better things to pay attention to as she stared at Leyland unbelievingly. Instant cast. It can't be. You are an arcanist. An arcanist? I've yet to become one, I just have a few incomplete arcane spell models just like you. Leyland smiled at her. The use of arcane spells was obviously different from that of normal spells. The biggest difference was that one didn't need the help of the weave to use them, instead using the elemental particles in the air. Leyland had made these plans long ago, but the AI chip was busy with the weave. Still, he'd managed to build a few arcane spell models in his leisure. The scorching ray that he casted just now was one of them. Given his abilities, it wasn't impossible for Leyland to completely reconstruct the Arcanists given enough time. Still, it could take tens of millennia. The transformation of normal spells into arcane spell models would be enough to keep him busy. When there were ready-made ones, why would he continue to make them himself? Leyland's real interest lay in the research of those Arcanists and the inheritance from those magi who had comprehended laws. There was more than one Magus who comprehended laws in the final war, and countless rank 8s who were similar to the Mother Core. An understanding of their paths and laws would be extremely beneficial to Leyland. Being a localization of magi, Arcanists must have received the teachings of the ancient magi. It was quite possible that they possessed information in those fields. Observing the different paths of law will be a great benefit. Though the ultimate path of every Magus is definitely different, it can at least give me a general direction. Leyland looked at the female wizard as multiple thoughts ran through his head. On the other hand, she let down her guard after seeing Leyland cast that spell. Her expression loosened up, and a sense of pity and reliance overcame her. It was as if she had found her own kind. Bam! A ball of green elemental particles started burning on the tips of her fingers, and she made a bizarre gesture, looking cautious. In the eyes of the arcanic fire, I will comply with the path of truth and abandon confusion, weakness, and suffering. I will succeed the path of the Arcanist. The light of Nethril will never be dimmed. My name is Helen. May I know who you are, my lord? Helen looked over to Leyland after the ritual with expectation. Is that how ancient Arcanists greet each other? I'm sorry, but I really don't know how to do this. Leyland spread his hands out and laughed helplessly. Honestly, I'm just an ordinary wizard who got some fragments of Arcanist inheritance. After a round of confusing explanation and using the Arcanist notebook as proof, Leyland finally proved his identity. Helen's own origins gradually grew clear before his eyes.